Darkness swallowed everything. The air tasted of concrete dust and copper, thick enough to choke on. Somewhere in the void, a woman's voice trembled through the wreckage. "Is anyone there, please? I can't feel my left leg anymore." Metal groaned. Something heavy shifted in the distance. Then came another voice, deeper, moving closer through rubble that clinked and scraped. "Stay calm. I'm coming to you. Keep talking so I can find you." A pause. Recognition flickered in her tone despite the pain. "Wait, that voice. You're Marcus Hayes, aren't you?" Silence stretched between them, broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the collapsed tunnel. His reply came cold as the steel pinning her down. "You remember my name. I'm impressed, Ms. Cross. 5 years ago, you forgot it pretty quick." 72 hours earlier, Victoria Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her 40th floor office, watching Denver's morning traffic crawl through the grid below. 42 years old, hair black threaded with premature silver pulled into a tight knot, Armani suit black as her mood, heels adding 4 inches she didn't need. Her face held the kind of beauty that sharp angles and exhaustion create, cheekbones that could cut, gray eyes that revealed nothing, a mouth trained not to smile unless profit margins demanded it. The iPad on her mahogany desk displayed the 7th email from Dr. Sarah Chen in 6 months. Victoria had read it 3 times already. Each reading made the knot in her stomach tighten another notch. "Ms. Cross, this is my 7th official warning. Concrete samples from Thunder Ridge Tunnel show compressive strength at only 60% of design specifications. I strongly recommend immediate closure for comprehensive inspection. Risk of structural failure is extremely high. Dr. Sarah Chen, PE Chief Structural Engineer." Victoria's finger hovered over the delete button. She'd performed this dance 6 times before. The 7th time felt no different, even though everything inside her screamed it should. Her phone vibrated. The screen read Dad. She picked up before the second ring. 20 years of conditioning. "Morning, Father." Richard Cross didn't believe in pleasantries. His voice came through like gravel sliding down concrete. "Just reviewed Q2 numbers from the CFO. Profits down 3.2%. Explain." "Material costs rose 8% compared to—" "I don't give a damn about reasons. I care about results. Sarah Chen's still sending those hysterical memos about Thunder Ridge?" Victoria's jaw tightened. Her free hand clenched against her thigh where he couldn't see. "She's concerned about the concrete quality, yes." "Concerned," Richard laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Victoria, I didn't build this empire by listening to pessimists. Concrete at 60% spec means it's safe. 100% is overkill. That's how engineers cover their asses, not how they protect people. But if something were to happen, if something happens, we have insurance. If you close that tunnel now, we face $50 million in contract penalties, lawsuits from Russo Construction, and media that'll eat us alive. Which do you prefer?" Victoria stared at her reflection in the window, saw her mother's face ghost over her own, the woman who'd left when Victoria was 14, who'd chosen freedom over becoming invisible. "I understand, Father." "Good, and start looking for Sarah Chen's replacement. She's a liability." The line went dead. Victoria pulled open the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside, beneath quarterly reports and acquisition proposals, lay a photograph protected by a manila folder. Her and her mother 28 years ago. Her mother laughing, Victoria hugging her tight. 2 weeks after that photo, her mother had packed a single suitcase and called a taxi. Victoria could still hear the conversation through her 14-year-old ears. "Victoria, don't let your father turn you into his mirror. He only knows how to make money. He never learned how to live." "Then don't leave me. I'll be alone." "Baby, if I stay, I'll disappear. Not my body, but my soul. Do you understand?" Victoria hadn't understood then. She understood now, staring at the photograph, her mother's warning echoing across decades. "I'm becoming him, aren't I, Mom?" She closed the drawer, deleted Dr. Chen's email, returned to the spreadsheet tracking Thunder Ridge's revenue projections. 4:30 in the afternoon found Marcus Hayes on his knees under Mrs. Rodriguez's kitchen sink, torque wrench in hand, replacing a corroded washer assembly. 38 years old, shoulders broad from years of real work, hands calloused and competent. face all angles with deep blue eyes that had stopped expecting good news. Brown hair gone gray at the temples earlier than it should have. Gray t-shirt covered in dust, jeans torn at the knee from wear rather than fashion. All done, Mrs. Rodriguez. Washer was shot, replaced it with a new one from my truck. The 70-year-old woman reached for her purse, counting bills with arthritic fingers. How much, mijo? $40. I had the washer as a spare. But you drove all the way here in installation. Mrs. Rodriguez, you've baked cookies for Emma twice this week. We don't charge good neighbors. The old woman smiled and pressed $60 into his palm anyway. Then take the extra 20 for ice cream. That sweet girl deserves a treat. Marcus accepted with a slight nod of gratitude he'd learned from his father. Acknowledged kindness without false protest. His 2008 Ford F-150 sat at the curb, blue paint faded, rear bumper secured with zip ties and determination. The radio crackled to life when he turned the ignition. Thunder Ridge Tunnel continues to stand as Colorado's pride, cutting travel time between Denver and Grand Junction to just 3 hours. Governor praised it as a shining example of public-private partnership efficiency. Marcus switched it off. His eyes caught the billboard looming over the intersection ahead. Thunder Ridge Tunnel, an engineering marvel by Cross Infrastructure. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. 5 years collapsed into 5 seconds. Marcus, at 32, wearing the putti he'd bought for Lisa's father's funeral, standing in Victoria Cross's office, with test results clutched in his fist. Ms. Cross, I have proof Frank Russo's using substandard concrete on the Silver Creek Bridge. These are independent lab results. If you don't fire him, I'll have to report this to the State Transportation Department. Victoria had sat behind that same mahogany desk, 37 then, her eyes already cold. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your concern, but Frank Russo has been our partner for 10 years. You've worked here 18 months. Are you certain this is the path you want to take? My job is ensuring safety. Yes, I'm certain. I'll look into it. 2 weeks later, Marcus received his termination letter. Official reason, restructuring. Real reason, Richard Cross called HR directly, voice like a hammer on glass. Fire that troublemaking engineer. He's damaging our relationship with a crucial contractor. Marcus never worked construction again. Every company in Colorado got the message. Cross Infrastructure had reach. Hiring Marcus Hayes meant trouble with Richard Cross. When Lisa got sick 3 years after his firing, the medical bills stacked higher than Marcus could climb. The good treatments, the experimental trials, the specialists who might have added years, all required insurance he no longer had, money he couldn't earn fast enough, fixing sinks and installing water heaters. Lisa died on a Tuesday morning in March. Emma had been 4 years old. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex, a weathered 2-story building in Aurora, where rent stayed low enough to manage. Emma burst from Mrs. Chen's door the moment his boots hit the stairs. Daddy! 7 years old, brown curls wild, blue eyes bright as his used to be. She crashed into his arms and he lifted her, inhaling the scent of crayons and the strawberry shampoo Mrs. Chen used. How's my girl? What did you learn at school? We learned about President Washington, and I made a picture. She thrust a piece of construction paper at him. A family of 3 figures, a tall man, a small girl, and above them an angel with yellow hair and wings. Block letters spelled out, Mommy in Heaven. Marcus's throat closed. He pulled Emma tighter against his chest. Mrs. Chen appeared in her doorway, 65 and kind, understanding, written across her weathered face. The teacher asked them to draw their families. Emma did beautiful work. Marcus managed a nod. Words wouldn't come. After Emma fell asleep that night, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his ancient laptop. The Cross Infrastructure website glowed in the dim room. He navigated to their projects page. Thunder Ridge Tunnel smiled back at him in high-resolution glory. General contractor, Russo Construction. His fist slammed the table. The laptop jumped. He opened his email, began typing for the 4th time in 6 months. To Colorado Department of Transportation. Subject, urgent warning, Thunder Ridge Tunnel. I am Marcus Hayes, former safety engineer at Cross Infrastructure. I write to warn you about Thunder Ridge Tunnel constructed by Russo Construction. 5 years ago, I discovered Russo construction using substandard materials and was terminated for reporting it. Now the same contractor is working on a project exponentially larger and more dangerous. I urgently request an independent inspection. He hit send. Like the previous 3 emails, it would vanish into bureaucratic void. Cross Infrastructure had lobbied state officials for 2 decades. Their influence ran deeper than Marcus could dig. He closed the laptop, looked at the photo of Lisa on the shelf above the sink, 35 when cancer won, blonde hair pulled back, smile that had made him believe the world could be good. Lisa, if I hadn't been a whistleblower, we'd still have had money for your treatment. Maybe you'd still be here. I'm sorry. The apartment stayed silent. Apologies never brought anyone back. Wednesday evening, 7:30. Thunder Ridge Tunnel stretched through the Colorado Rockies, a concrete throat swallowing vehicles headed west. Victoria sat in the back of her Mercedes S-Class limousine. Black leather seats, partition up between her and Tom the driver. Tom was 55, ex-Army, reliable as sunrise. They were headed to Grand Junction for an 8 a.m. meeting with state contractors. Flying would have been faster. Richard had vetoed it. Private jets are wasteful. CEOs need to show fiscal responsibility. Set an example. Victoria's iPad glowed with Julia Park's latest email. Her assistant, 32, sharp, increasingly uncomfortable with Victoria's decisions. Ms. Cross, I've attached every safety warning Dr. Chen sent over the past 6 months. I think you should read them. Not as an employee, as a person. Julia Victoria opened the attachment. 23 emails arranged chronologically, each more urgent than the last. The final one, sent 3 days ago, made her hands shake. Ms. Cross, I cannot remain silent. If you won't close this tunnel, I must contact OSHA and the press. I'm sorry, but my conscience won't allow me to be complicit in an impending disaster. Victoria's phone buzzed. Daniel, her brother, older by 2 years, smarter by miles. He'd walked away from Cross Infrastructure a decade ago, chosen architecture over empire, happiness over father's approval. Hey, Vic. Daniel, heard Dad's pressuring you about Thunder Ridge. How do you... Vic, I worked for the company 10 years, remember? I know how Dad operates. Are you listening to Sarah Chen? Silence stretched between them. Daniel sighed, the sound of someone who'd already lost this battle. Vic, when are you going to stop living Dad's life instead of yours? You got to walk away, Daniel. I don't have that option. You always have that option. You're just too scared to take it. Victoria ended the call, dropped her phone on the seat like it burned. 200 meters behind Victoria's limousine, Marcus guided his F-150 through the same tunnel. Emma asleep in the back seat, stuffed bear tucked under her chin. He'd spent the day in Grand Junction installing a heating system, earned $200, drove back exhausted. The radio played before he remembered to keep it off. Controversy continues surrounding Thunder Ridge Tunnel as an anonymous whistleblower alleges safety violations. Cross Infrastructure denies all accusations, stating the tunnel has passed every state-mandated inspection. Marcus killed the radio, glanced at Emma in the rearview mirror, her face peaceful in sleep, mouth slightly open, trust absolute that her father would get her home safe. His internal monologue ran like water over stones, constant, wearing him down. There are moments when doing right means losing everything. But if you don't do right, you lose yourself. And Emma doesn't deserve a father who became the coward he hates. Inside the tunnel, Dr. Sarah Chen stood near the western entrance with vibration sensors and mounting dread. The insurance company had hired her independently after 7 ignored warnings. Her equipment screamed data no one wanted to hear. Abnormal vibration detected. Danger level. She called Victoria's number. Straight to voicemail. Tried Captain James Morrison at Denver Fire and Rescue. Captain, I need you to evacuate this tunnel immediately. Morrison's voice carried the weight of procedures and liability. Dr. Chen, I need official authorization from Cross Infrastructure to close a state highway. By the time you get authorization, people will be dead. I understand your concern, but my hands are tied. Call someone with actual authority. Sarah tried Victoria again. Still voicemail. She looked at her watch. 8:42 p.m., her sensors spiked. vibrations increasing 15%. She looked up. A crack in the concrete ceiling had widened since her last check 2 hours ago. Dust drifted down like snow. God help us, it's going to collapse. 8:47 p.m. Inside Thunder Ridge Tunnel, Victoria's limousine cruised at 60 miles per hour. The sound came first, deep underground thunders, the mountain itself roaring in pain. Tom, did you hear something? Yes, Ms. Cross, I think... The lights flickered, once, twice. Every vehicle's headlights suddenly seemed inadequate against the gathering darkness. Tom's hands tightened on the wheel. Hold on! 8:48. The ceiling cracked with the sound of 1,000 rifles firing at once. A spider web of destruction spread from a central weak point, concrete fragmenting under stresses it was never built to handle. A 4x4-meter slab separated from the roof and fell like judgment 30 meters ahead of Victoria's limousine. Tom's combat reflexes took over. Foot slammed the brake, wheels screamed, but physics had already won. The limousine spun sideways, metal grinding against concrete as the vehicle smashed into the tunnel's left wall. Marcus saw everything unfold ahead of him through his windshield. The falling concrete, the spinning limousine, the beginning of catastrophe. Jesus Christ. His boot hit the brake. Emma jerked awake. Daddy, what's happening? Emma, get down on the floor, now! He twisted in his seat, right arm reaching back to shield her as she scrambled downward. A second concrete panel dropped from the ceiling 50 meters ahead of his truck, smashing into the roadway with force that cracked the asphalt beneath it. 8:48 and 45 seconds. The collapse spread like disease. Structural failure cascading from the weakest point outward. What engineers called progressive collapse. What survivors called hell. Victoria's limousine took the full weight of a 3-ton concrete beam that punched through the reinforced roof at an angle, shearing through metal like it was foil. The beam crushed Tom instantly. Ribs shattered, skull fractured against the steering wheel. Death so fast he never felt it. Victoria flew sideways, head smashing the window. Glass exploded. Blood sheeted down her face from a gash above her eyebrow. A 2-meter steel I-beam followed the concrete through the destroyed roof, driving downward, pinning her left leg from knee to ankle against the crumpled dashboard. Her scream was lost in the thunder of the mountain eating itself. She tried to move her leg. Nothing. Looked down through blood and tears. The steel beam sat across her like a sleeping giant, impossibly heavy, already soaked with her blood. Tom? Tom! She reached forward with shaking fingers, found his wrist. No pulse. Skin already cooling. Victoria began to cry, for Tom, for herself, for every warning she'd ignored, every choice that had led to this moment of perfect consequence. Marcus's truck stood frozen between falling sections. Concrete rained behind them, blocking retreat. Debris crashed ahead, eliminating forward escape. A secondary shockwave rumbled through the mountain. More ceiling collapsed, burying the rear half of Marcus's truck under rubble. Emma sobbed in the back. I'm scared, Daddy. I'm scared. Marcus unbuckled, climbed into the back seat, wrapped his daughter in his arms as the world ended around them. We're okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here. We're going to be okay. His voice stayed steady through sheer force of will, the way fathers lie to their children when truth would shatter them. 8:50 p.m. The mountain stopped screaming. Dust hung in the air, thick as fog, turning headlights into useless diffusion. Car alarms wailed. People shouted. Metal settled with groans that sounded almost alive. Marcus tested his door, jammed. He put his shoulder into it, grunted, pushed until something gave. The door opened halfway. Enough. He lifted Emma, carried her into the choking darkness. Cover your nose with your shirt, baby. The dust is bad. Emma buried her face against his chest, small body trembling. They picked their way through the nightmare landscape. Marcus's eyes adjusted slowly. Shapes emerged. Crushed vehicles, scattered debris, a man lying motionless beside a destroyed Toyota. Marcus found a man in his 40s, conscious, leg bent at a wrong angle. You okay? Broken leg, but alive. Christ, what happened? Tunnel collapsed. I'm getting people out. Can you walk? Maybe, with help. Marcus supported the man with one arm, carried Emma with the other, moving toward where exit should be. Then his flashlight, always kept in the truck's glove box, Lisa's insistence before she died, caught chrome and black paint. A limousine, expensive, custom. The license plate carried a logo that turned Marcus's blood to ice. Cross one, he stopped walking. His heart hammered against his ribs. 5 years collapsed again. That same limousine parked in front of Cross Infrastructure's headquarters the day security escorted Marcus out with his belongings in a cardboard box. He'd watched it from the lobby window, Richard Cross climbing into the back, Victoria following, neither looking back at the man they'd destroyed. Marcus approached slowly, shined his light through the shattered window. A woman, black hair matted with blood and dust, black suit torn, steel beam across her leg, blood pooling beneath. Even through the damage, even through the years, he knew that face. Victoria Cross, the man with the broken leg, called from behind. "Hey man, we need to keep moving." Marcus stood frozen. Every molecule in his body screamed contradictions. Emma tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, that lady is hurt." Marcus looked at Victoria, looked at Emma, looked back at Victoria. His internal voice spoke with Lisa's cadence, her kindness cutting through his rage. "This is the woman who destroyed everything, who fired you for doing right, who made it impossible to save me. You could walk away. You should walk away. Let the system save her, if they want to." But Emma is watching, learning what kind of man her father is, learning whether integrity means something only when it's convenient. Marcus crouched until his eyes were level with Emma's. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about whether someone deserves it. It's about whether you deserve to be better than your anger. He turned to the injured man. "Take my daughter outside. I'm staying." "What? Man, this whole place could come down." "I know. Take her anyway." Marcus pressed Emma's shoulders gently. "Baby, go with this gentleman. Daddy will be right behind you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Promise?" "I promise. Count to 1,000. I'll be there before you finish." Emma wrapped her arms around his neck one more time, then let the injured man lead her toward the distant glow of emergency lights. Marcus turned back to the limousine, approached the window. Victoria's eyes were closed. He rapped his knuckles on the remaining glass. "Anyone alive in there?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, confused. She saw him through a haze of shock and pain. "Thank God, who are you?" Marcus said nothing. Worked the jammed door with his pry bar, leverage against twisted metal. The door shrieked open. Victoria squinted at him in the flashlight's glow. "Your voice, it's familiar." Marcus's jaw set. He pulled a rag from his pocket, wiped dust from his own face deliberately slow. Recognition hit Victoria like electricity. "Marcus? Marcus Hayes? So you do remember names. I'm surprised. How are you here?" "Wrong place, wrong time. Story of my life since I met you." Victoria tried to move, gasped. Her leg wouldn't respond to any command. "Please, you have to help me get out." "I have to?" Marcus crouched, examined the steel beam with professional eyes. "I don't have to do anything, Ms. Cross. In fact, I have about 100 good reasons to walk away right now." "Marcus, please." "Save it." He positioned his flashlight on the floor, illuminating the beam. "I need leverage. This weighs 200 pounds minimum." Victoria's voice cracked. You're still going to help me? After everything I did to you?" Marcus didn't look at her, started searching for something to use as a fulcrum point. "I'm not helping you. I'm helping my daughter sleep at night, knowing her father's a man she can respect. There's a difference." He found a chunk of concrete the right size, wedged it under the beam near Victoria's knee, positioned his pry bar. Victoria watched him work, something breaking open in her chest. "I didn't know about your wife, Marcus. I swear I didn't know. But you didn't care to find out either, did you? People like you don't think about what happens after you fire someone. They're just numbers on paper." "You're right." The words came out small. "You're absolutely right." Marcus put his weight on the pry bar. The beam shifted 1 centimeter. Victoria whimpered. "This is bad. I need better leverage." "Just leave me. You don't owe me anything. You owe me less than nothing." Marcus finally looked at her. His blue eyes held nothing but exhausted truth. "My daughter is outside counting to 1,000. She's learning what kind of man I am." I won't teach her that leaving people to do is acceptable, no matter how much they deserve it. Victoria's tears mixed with blood and dust, running dark tracks down her face. I'm sorry. About your wife, about your career, about you. I'm so sorry. Keep your apologies. We'll talk after, if we both survive. Marcus searched the wreckage, found a longer piece of rebar, created a secondary leverage point. Physics and desperation combined. He positioned himself, muscles tensing. When I lift, you pull your leg out. One chance, understand? Yes, Marcus braced, drew breath, pushed down on the rebar with everything 38 years of hard living had built. The beam lifted 3 inches. Now, Victoria pulled. Her leg came free to the knee. The rebar snapped. The beam crashed down, missing her by millimeters, grazing Marcus's shoulder hard enough to tear his shirt and skin beneath. Marcus grunted, stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. Victoria dragged herself forward, out from under the dashboard, leg trailing useless and bleeding. Marcus, you're hurt. It's nothing. He pressed his palm against the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. Old injury, shoulder's been bad since he'd taken a construction job right after being fired, desperate for money, worked longer than he should have, gotten hurt because exhaustion and grief made people careless. Since you fired me and I had to take whatever work I could find. Victoria went silent. Marcus forced himself upright, moved to Victoria, checked her leg. Tibia fractured, obvious even through the blood. Not compound, no bone-breaking skin, but bad enough to kill her through blood loss if they didn't move. He tore strips from Victoria's ruined blazer, wrapped her leg tight. Field medicine learned from YouTube videos and necessity. Can you walk? No. Then I'm carrying you. Marcus, you're injured. I'm injured because I saved you. Don't waste it by arguing. He pulled her up. She screamed. He shifted her weight, got her across his shoulders in a fireman's carry he'd learned from the same YouTube videos. Started moving toward the exit, each step agony in his shoulder, but momentum more important than pain. Victoria's voice drifted down, weak from shock. Why didn't you just leave me? Marcus's answer came after long silence. Because hate is easy. Hate costs nothing. Hate just eats you from the inside until there's nothing left worth saving. Doing the right thing when every part of you wants to do wrong, that's where strength lives. Real strength. Yet Victoria pressed her forehead against his back, felt his shoulders working beneath her weight. This man she'd destroyed, carrying her through hell because his daughter was watching, and integrity mattered more than revenge. I don't deserve this. Nobody gets what they deserve. That's why we have to choose what we give. 10 p.m. outside Thunder Ridge Tunnel. Emergency lights painted the night red and blue. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars created a maze of authority and chaos. Captain James Morrison, 50 years old and 20 years of rescues behind him, orchestrated the organized panic. Team 1, establish the safety perimeter. Team 2, prep the rescue equipment. Dr. Sarah Chen ran to him, tablet clutched in white-knuckled hands. Captain, I warned them. I told them this tunnel wasn't safe. Doctor, now isn't the time. There are at least 15 people still trapped inside. We have to act now. Morrison looked at the tunnel entrance, dust still billowing out, sounds of secondary collapses echoing from within. His face carried the weight of every impossible decision he had ever made. I can't send my people in. The structure's too unstable. So we just let them die? I can't risk my team's lives for people who might already be dead. Marcus emerged from the smoke carrying the Victoria, stumbling, half blind with pain. He set her down near the triage area just as EMT Sarah Winters sprinted over. Sir, are you okay? Let me see. Emma broke away from the injured man she'd been waiting with. Ran to Marcus, crashed into his legs sobbing. Daddy, Daddy, you came back. Marcus dropped to his knees, wrapped his good arm around her, buried his face in her hair. I promised, didn't I? How high did you count? 982. You made it. Told you I would. Captain Morrison appeared beside them. You were inside? Yeah, got my daughter out. Then went back for... Marcus gestured to Victoria being loaded onto a stretcher. Morrison's eyes widened. That's Victoria Cross, the CEO. I know who she is. You went back for her? Somebody had to. Morrison studied Marcus with new intensity, saw the blood soaking through his shoulder, the way he favored his right side, the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. You're a civilian. You had no obligation. Obligations got nothing to do with it, Dimpton. I did what needed doing, that's all. Emma tugged Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, I was so scared. I know, baby, but you were brave. You counted just like I asked. That takes courage. Victoria, being examined by paramedics 20 feet away, heard Emma's voice, turned her head, saw Marcus kneeling with his daughter, the two of them holding each other like survivors of separate wars finally reunited. Something in Victoria's face shifted, softened, broke open. She reached out one hand toward them, though they couldn't possibly reach back. Whispered words only the paramedics could hear. That man saved my life. His name is Marcus Hayes. 5 years ago, I destroyed his. Please write that down. Someone needs to know. The paramedic wrote it down, not understanding, not needing to. Daniel Cross arrived 30 minutes later, driving from Aspen at speeds that would have earned tickets in different circumstances. 44 years old, architect, estranged from his father for a decade but never from his sister. He found Captain Morrison coordinating rescue teams. My sister, Victoria Cross, she's alive, injured but stable, over there. Daniel ran to the ambulance where Victoria lay on a gurney, legs splinted, IV in her arm, eyes closed. Vic, Jesus, Vic. Her eyes opened. Focused slowly. Daniel? I came as soon as I heard. What the hell happened? The tunnel collapsed, just like Sarah Chen said it would, just like I knew it would. Daniel's jaw tightened. Dad pushed you to keep it open. Dad didn't push me. I chose. I'm the CEO. I signed the documents. I ignored the warnings. This is on me. Don't say that to anyone else. The lawyers, I don't care about the lawyers. I care about the people who died because I was too scared to stand up to a man who hasn't loved me since I was 14 years old. Daniel took her hand, squeezed it. You're alive, Vic. That's what matters right now. A man saved me. Marcus Hayes. I fired him 5 years ago for reporting safety violations. His wife died because he couldn't afford treatment after I blacklisted him. And tonight he came back into a collapsing tunnel to save me. Daniel said nothing. What could he say? 11 p.m. Richard Cross arrived in his black limousine, bodyguards flanking, lawyers trailing. 68 years old, silver hair perfect, suit custom, expression carved from granite. He found Daniel standing guard outside Victoria's ambulance. Where is she? Resting. I need to speak with her about the statement we're releasing. No. Richard's eyes went cold. Excuse me? She just nearly died in a tunnel that collapsed because you pressured her to ignore safety warnings. You don't get to pressure her about anything else. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. Daniel, you walked away from this family once. Don't make me cut you out entirely. You can't cut out someone who already left, Dad. I'm here for Victoria. Not for you, not for the company. Just her. Richard stared at his son, saw nothing he could leverage, nothing he could use, turned on his heel, walked to where Captain Morrison stood coordinating teams. Captain, I'm Richard Cross. Cross Infrastructure owns this tunnel. I need updates immediately. Morrison barely glanced at him. Sir, I'm managing an active rescue situation. You'll get updates when appropriate. Do you understand who I am? Yes, and I don't care. People are still trapped in there. That takes priority over your PR concerns. Richard's face flushed. He opened his mouth to respond. A young firefighter interrupted. Captain, we've got new readings. Structures stabilizing in sectors A and B. We might be able to send a team in at first light. Morrison nodded. Prep Team 3. We go in as soon as civil engineers clear it. Sarah Chen approached Morrison, face tight with barely controlled fury. Captain, I need you to know I warned Cross Infrastructure 7 times about this tunnel. 7 official warnings. They ignored every single one. Morrison looked at her, at Richard Cross standing 10 feet away, at the tunnel entrance still smoking with destruction. Doctor, save that for the investigation. Right now, let's focus on getting people out. Sarah nodded, walked away, past Richard without looking at him. Richard moved to his limousine, pulled out his phone, called his head attorney. Martin, we have a situation. I need you to prepare a statement. Act of God, unforeseeable geological instability. Nothing about concrete quality. Nothing about timelines. Are we clear? He listened. His expression never changed. Good. And Martin, find out who this Marcus Hayes is, the man who pulled Victoria out. I want to know everything about him by morning. Midnight. Marcus sat on the bumper of an ambulance. EMT Sarah Winters finishing bandaging his shoulder. Emma slept against his chest, finally unconscious from exhaustion and shock. Sarah worked carefully, voice gentle. This is a significant laceration. You should get x-rays to rule out rotator cuff damage. Can't afford x-rays, just wrap it tight. Sir, Marcus, my name's Marcus. Marcus, you saved someone's life tonight, at considerable cost to yourself. That's worth something. It's worth my daughter being able to look at me and see someone worth respecting. That's all the payment I need. Sarah finished the bandage, taped it secure. There, try not to use that arm for a week. I'm a handyman, that's my working arm. Then be a one-armed handyman for a week, or be an unemployed handyman permanently. Your choice. Marcus smiled despite everything, first smile in hours. You're good at this. 8 years on the jaw, you learn to tell patients hard truths gently. She handed him a business card. That's the name of a clinic that does sliding scale payments. Get your shoulder x-rayed, for Emma's sake, if not yours. Marcus took the card, nodded thanks. Captain Morrison appeared beside them. Mr. Hayes, I need a statement. You were inside when it collapsed? Yeah. Can you describe what you saw, for the record? Marcus described it. The falling concrete, Victoria's limousine, the steel beam, the rescue. He kept it factual, no emotion, just events in sequence. Morrison wrote it all down. You said you knew Ms. Cross before tonight? She fired me 5 years ago, from Cross Infrastructure. I was their safety engineer. Morrison's pen stopped moving. He looked up. You were a safety engineer for the company that built this tunnel, and they fired you? I reported their contractor for unrestricted contractor for using substandard materials. They chose the contractor over me. Morrison's expression hardened. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to need you to speak with investigators, federal ones. This just became more than a rescue operation. I figured. Morrison nodded, walked away. Marcus watched him go, felt the weight of what came next settling on his shoulders heavier than Victoria had been. Emma stirred against his chest. Daddy? Yeah, baby. Are we going home now? Soon, just a little longer. Will that lady be okay? The one you saved? Marcus looked across the parking area. Victoria's ambulance was pulling away, lights flashing, heading to Denver General. I think so. Good. Mommy would be proud of you. Marcus's throat tightened. He kissed the top of Emma's head. I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. 1 a.m. The mountain loomed above the chaos, indifferent and eternal. Emergency lights continued their rotations. Rescue teams mobilized for dawn operations. Families gathered at police barriers, holding photographs of loved ones, waiting for news that might never come good. And somewhere in the wreckage, still entombed in concrete and darkness, 5 people waited for rescue that morning would bring or wouldn't, trapped in the consequences of shortcuts taken and warnings ignored, of profit chosen over safety, of corporate calculation that never factored in the cost of human lives crushed beneath quarterly earnings reports. Marcus stood, Emma in his arms, and walked toward his damaged truck. Mrs. Chen had driven from Aurora to collect them, her old sedan idling at the edge of the emergency perimeter. He didn't look back at the tunnel, didn't watch the rescue teams preparing, didn't think about the federal investigation coming or the media storm that would follow. Right now, his daughter needed to be home. The rest could wait for daylight. But as he reached Mrs. Chen's car, Emma lifted her head from his shoulder and looked back at the smoking tunnel entrance. Daddy, are you going to help them find the other people? Marcus stopped, turned, stared at the mountain that had almost killed him. If they ask me to, yeah, I guess I am. Even though it's scary? especially because it's scary. That's when people need help most. Emma laid her head back down. Okay, Mommy would definitely be proud then. Marcus climbed into Mrs. Chen's car. She drove them home through empty pre-dawn streets while Marcus held his daughter and wondered how a night that had started so ordinary had ended with him carrying his worst enemy out of hell and into a reckoning neither of them had seen coming. The investigation would reveal everything. The ignored warnings, the bribes, the substandard concrete, the pressure from Richard Cross to keep costs down and timelines short. But none of that had happened yet. For now, in this space between disaster and consequence, Marcus just held his daughter and drove toward home, and whatever tomorrow would demand of them both. 9:20 p.m. Marcus moved deeper into Thunder Ridge Tunnel, flashlight beam cutting through dust that hung suspended like the ghosts of bad decisions. His boots crunched over debris, shattered safety glass, twisted rebar, chunks of concrete that had no business falling from properly engineered ceilings. The pin in his flashlight flickered. Battery at 40%. Marcus tapped it against his palm, coaxed more life from failing cells. Darkness pressed in from all sides, patient and hungry. He read the tunnel's wounds like a language he'd spent 15 years learning. Spiderweb cracks radiating at 45 degrees meant shear stress. Ceiling panels sagging meant missing rebar. Continuous dustfall meant the mountain was still deciding whether to finish what it started. Marcus pulled chalk from his pocket. Carpenter's chalk, always carried since his first construction job at 19. Drew arrows on the wall pointing back towards safety, breadcrumbs for himself or whoever came after. The first body appeared at 9:25. A man, maybe 50, pinned beneath a Toyota Camry that looked like it had been fed through an industrial press. The man's face was turned toward Marcus, eyes open, seeing nothing. Blood had pooled around his head, already congealing in the tunnel's cool air. Marcus stopped, removed his hard hat, bowed his head for 3 seconds of silence because someone needed to acknowledge this man had existed, had mattered, deserved more than becoming a statistic in tomorrow's news cycle. I'm sorry, I came too late. He replaced his hat, kept moving. Grief was a luxury he couldn't afford while others might still breathe. 9:30 brought the first real obstacle. 2 concrete slabs had fallen against each other, creating a triangular gap maybe 2 feet high. Marcus would have to crawl through blind, trusting the slabs wouldn't shift while he was beneath them. He set down his pry bar first, then his flashlight, got on his belly, started inching forward. Halfway through, the slab above his head trembled. Dust rained into his eyes. Marcus froze, every muscle locked, counting heartbeats that felt loud enough to shake loose more ceiling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The trembling stopped. Marcus exhaled slowly, continued crawling, emerged on the other side with his shirt torn at the shoulder, skin scraped raw, fresh blood mixing with old-on fabric that had seen better days 5 years ago. He stood, wiped sweat, kept going. 9:40. The sound reached him, metal on metal, rhythmic and deliberate. 3 short taps, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. Marcus's pulse spiked. Only people with training knew that pattern. Military, first responders, engineers taught emergency protocols. He grabbed his pry bar, struck it against exposed rebar. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The tapping answered immediately. 2 strikes, Morse for received, coming to you. Marcus switched his flashlight to its brightest setting, damned the battery, and moved fast toward the sound. 9:50. The Mercedes S-Class materialized from the dust like a monument to wealth meeting physics. The roof had collapsed inward, driver's side crushed completely, passenger compartment compressed but intact enough to create survival space. A steel I-beam protruded through the roof at an angle, disappearing into the cabin. Marcus approached the rear door, rapped his knuckles against the window. "Anyone in there?" A woman's voice, barely audible, worn thin by pain and fear. "Yes, please help me." Marcus wedged his pry bar between door and frame, leaned his weight into it. Metal groaned. The door gave 6 inches. Not enough. He repositioned, tried again. This time it opened. His flashlight illuminated the interior. Victoria Cross looked like someone had taken a corporate portrait and run it through a war zone. Black hair matted with blood and concrete dust. Armani suit shredded, face pale beneath grime, lips bloodless, eyes dilated with shock. The steel beam entered through the roof and pinned her left leg from knee to ankle, crushing it against the buckled dashboard. She squinted against his light, trying to focus. "Thank God. Who are you?" Marcus didn't answer, studied the beam, calculating angles and weight distribution and how much leverage he'd need to move mass that had no interest in being moved. Victoria's eyes adjusted enough to see his face through the dust. "Wait, your voice, it's familiar." Marcus turned away, wiped dirt from his own face with deliberate slowness, let her see him clearly. Recognition hit her like voltage. "Marcus? Marcus Hayes?" His tone could have frozen water. "Funny, 5 years ago you couldn't remember my name when you signed my termination papers." Victoria's breath caught. "What are you doing here? How?" "Wrong place, wrong time. Story of my life since our paths crossed." She tried moving her leg, gasped. Her face went even whiter, if that was possible. "Please, you have to get me out. I can't feel anything below my knee." "Have to?" Marcus knelt, examining the beam without touching it. "That's interesting word choice. I don't have to do anything, Ms. Cross. Actually, I have about 100 solid reasons to walk away right now and let the professionals handle this, if they decide you're worth the risk." Victoria stared at him, something between hope and horror playing across her features. "You came back anyway. After everything, don't read into it. I'm here because I made a promise to my 7-year-old daughter. She's outside counting to 1,000, waiting for her father to show her what integrity looks like. This isn't about you. It's about who I am when she looks at me." Marcus set his flashlight on the floor, angled to illuminate the work area. The beam weighed at least 200 pounds, probably more. Solid steel. He'd need serious mechanical advantage to lift it even an inch. Victoria watched him work, her voice small. "You know who I am. You could leave me here. You'd be justified. Keep talking. Need you conscious. What should I talk about?" "Anything. When's the last time you slept?" Victoria's laugh came out broken. "Tuesday maybe, 48 hours ago. Board meeting ran until midnight, then emails until 3 a.m. "Why were you in this tunnel at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday?" "Driving to Grand Junction, meeting with state contractors tomorrow morning. Father said flying was wasteful." Marcus found a chunk of concrete the right size, positioned it as a fulcrum point beneath the beam. "Richard Cross lectures about waste. That's rich." Victoria flinched at the contempt in his voice. "Marcus, I know you hate me. You have every right, but I need you to know, firing you wasn't my decision. My father called HR directly." Marcus stopped working, turned to face her. "You signed the papers. I have copies. Your signature, Victoria J. Cross." "I signed what my father told me to sign." "And that makes it better? You were 37 years old, CEO. You had power. You chose not to use it." Silence filled the space between them, heavier than the steel beam. Victoria's voice emerged barely above a whisper. "You're right, I chose wrong. I was terrified of my father, terrified of being seen as weak, terrified of becoming my mother, walking away and being labeled a quitter. So I stayed, and I signed. And I destroyed people like you because I was too cowardly to stand up to a man who stopped loving me when I turned 14. Marcus went back to positioning his pry bar. "At least you're honest now. Little late, but honest." 10 p.m. Marcus worked in silence, trying different leverage angles. The beam shifted 1 centimeter. Victoria bit back a scream. "This is bad. Really bad. I need better mechanical advantage, or we're both dying here." Victoria's breathing had gone shallow, rapid, shock setting in deeper. "Then go. Save yourself. Your daughter needs you." "My daughter needs me to be someone she can respect. That means I don't abandon people, even people who abandoned me first." He searched the wreckage with his flashlight, found a longer section of rebar, dragged it over, created a secondary lever system using the first lever as a fulcrum for the second. Basic physics applied to desperate circumstances. Victoria watched him work with something like awe cutting through her pain. Where did you learn this? YouTube, mostly. Library books. 15 years of doing work you can't afford to screw up because nobody's giving you a second chance. I thought you were a safety engineer, MIT graduate. I was, for 18 months, until you blacklisted me. After that, I was whatever paid the bills. Plumber, electrician, handyman, guy who fixes what rich people break. The words landed like hammers. Victoria closed her eyes. Your wife. Marcus, I swear I didn't know about your wife. But you didn't ask. You never asked what happened to the people you fired. They were just entries on a spreadsheet. Problem solved. Move forward. Maximize shareholder value. Marcus positioned himself at the lever, muscles bunched under his torn shirt. When I lift, you pull your leg out. One chance. If this rebar snaps, that beam comes down and we're done. Understand? Yes, he drew breath. Gathered everything 38 years of hard living had built into his frame. Pushed down on the makeshift lever system with force that made his shoulder scream and his vision blur. The beam lifted. 3 inches. 4. Now! Victoria hauled her leg toward her body. It came free to the knee. The rebar snapped with a crack like a rifle shot. The beam crashed down, missing her by millimeters, grazing Marcus's injured shoulder hard enough to tear skin that was already damaged. Marcus staggered backward, hand clamped over his shoulder. Blood welled between his fingers, dark in the flashlight's glow. Victoria dragged herself forward, away from the dashboard, leg trailing behind her at a wrong angle. Marcus, you're bleeding. It's fine, old injury acting up. That's not fine, it happened 5 years ago. Construction accident. I was working double shifts trying to save money for Lisa's treatments. Exhaustion makes you careless. Rotator cuff tear. Never got it properly repaired because that requires insurance I lost when you fired me. The statement hung in the air like an accusation that needed no embellishment. Victoria started crying. Not delicate tears, but ugly, broken sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry, God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. About your wife, about your shoulder, about everything. Save the apologies, we're not out yet. Marcus forced himself upright, despite the pain radiating down his arm. Moved to Victoria, knelt, examined her leg. Tibia fractured, clean break but displaced. Massive swelling. Blood flow compromised but not severed. She'd lose the leg if they didn't move fast, but she'd live. He tore strips from her ruined Armani blazer. $5,000 fabric reduced to field dressing. Wrapped her leg tight enough to immobilize it, reduce blood loss, give them a fighting chance. Can you walk? No. Then I'm carrying you. Marcus, you're injured. I'm injured because I saved you. Don't insult both of us by arguing about it now. He pulled her up. She screamed. He got her positioned across his shoulders in a fireman's carry that sent fresh agony through his damaged rotator cuff. But physics didn't care about his comfort. Started walking back the way he'd come, following his chalk arrows, each step measured against the structural integrity of a tunnel that could decide to finish them at any moment. Victoria's weight pressed down on his shoulders. Her voice drifted from somewhere above his head, weak and distant. Why didn't you leave me? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Focused on breathing, on placing one foot in front of the other, on not thinking about his shoulder or his failure or his dead wife or the 7-year-old girl counting to 1,000 outside. Finally, after they'd covered 50 meters. Because hate is the easiest thing in the world. Costs nothing, requires no strength. It just sits inside you and rots everything from the inside out until there's nothing left worth being. But choosing to do right when every part of you wants to do wrong, when you'd be justified in walking away, that's where real strength lives. That's the only strength that matters. Victoria pressed her forehead against his back, felt his muscles working beneath her weight. This man she'd crushed, carrying her through hell because his daughter was watching, and integrity couldn't be compromised even when compromise was easier. I don't deserve this. Nobody gets what they deserve. Not really. That's why we have to choose what we give. 10:30. They reached the section where water pipes had burst, flooding the tunnel to waist depth. Marcus waded in without hesitation. The water was mountain cold, fed by underground springs that had never seen sunlight. Victoria gasped, body going rigid. So cold. Talk to me. Stay conscious. About what? Tell me about your mother. Victoria's teeth chattered as Marcus pushed through water that soaked them both. She left when I was 14. Couldn't handle my father anymore. He made her feel worthless, invisible, like she was just another asset he owned. One day she packed a bag and called a taxi while he was at work. What did she say? She said, Victoria's voice caught. She said, don't let your father turn you into his mirror. He only knows how to make money. He never learned how to live. Then she drove away and I never saw her again. Marcus navigated around a fallen panel. Did you try to find her? No, I was too angry, felt abandoned, betrayed. So I stayed with father and proved I wasn't weak like her. Proved I could be exactly what he wanted, and now look at me. You're still breathing, that's something. Am I, or am I just another asset he owns, programmed to maximize returns? Marcus reached the far side of the flooded section, climbed out dripping, muscles trembling from cold and exertion, and blood loss that was becoming harder to ignore. 10:45. He set Victoria down to rest against a relatively intact wall section. His shoulder had gone from screaming to numbness, which probably meant bad things, but he couldn't spare the mental energy to care. Victoria looked at him through the flashlight's dimming glow. Your shoulder is dislocated. I know. You can't carry me anymore. You're going into shock. Watch me. Marcus, I made a promise to Emma. I keep my promises. Victoria studied him, saw the blood soaking through his shirt, the way he couldn't lift his left arm, the pallor beneath the dirt. Then teach me. What? Teach me how to reset your shoulder. I took basic first aid at MIT. It was 20 years ago, but I remember some of it. Marcus laughed, a sound like gravel sliding. You want to play field medic? You saved my life. Now let me do something useful instead of being dead weight. He looked at her. Really looked. Saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there an hour ago. Determination, maybe. Or desperation to prove she wasn't the person she'd spent 20 years becoming. Fine, my arm needs to be pulled outward, then rotated up and in. It's going to hurt like hell. I'll be as fast as I can. Marcus braced himself. Victoria positioned her hands under his arm above his elbow, exactly where he told her. Pulled outward with strength he hadn't known she possessed. Marcus's world went white with pain. He heard himself scream, hoped Emma was far enough of a way not to hear it. The shoulder clicked back into socket with a sound like wet branches breaking. Marcus sagged, panting, vision swimming. Good, that's good. Victoria tore more strips from her blazer, created a makeshift sling, immobilizing his arm against his chest. You just sacrificed a $5,000 jacket. It's fabric and thread. Your life is worth more than that. Everyone's life is worth more than that. A moment passed between them. Something shifting in the darkness. Old hatreds making room for something neither of them had names for yet. Marcus pushed himself upright with his good arm. We need to move. Tunnel's not getting more stable. 11 p.m. They traveled together now, Marcus leaning on Victoria for balance, Victoria hopping on one leg with Marcus supporting most of her weight. Neither could make it alone, but together they formed something functional, a partnership born from disaster and necessity. Victoria broke the silence first. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a bridge engineer, not a CEO. I wanted to design bridges that lasted 100 years, that connected people, that were beautiful and safe and permanent. What stopped you? My father said bridge engineering was for people who couldn't handle real responsibility, said CEOs ran the world. So I gave up what I loved to become what he demanded. Marcus navigated around a pile of debris. You're 42, not dead. You could still design bridges. It's too late. I'm trapped in a life I built to please someone who's never been pleased with anything. Marcus stopped walking, turned to look at her. Listen to me. I'm 38. I'm fixing toilets after being an engineer. My wife is dead. My career is destroyed. My daughter asks me every night if I'm happy, and I have to lie because the truth would break her heart. But I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to be someone she can look up to. It's never too late to become who you should have been. It just takes more courage than staying who you are. Victoria's eyes filled. How are you not consumed by hate? I would be. Oh, I was, for years. But hate's a fire that burns the person holding it. I had to let it go or it would kill me. Emma deserves better than a father who died inside because he couldn't forgive. They reached the narrow crawl space Marcus had barely fit through alone. With Victoria's broken leg, it seemed impossible. I can't get through that. Yes, you can. You're going first. I'll push you. Marcus, we don't have time to argue. Get down. Victoria lowered herself, crying out when her leg bumped concrete, got on her belly, started pulling herself forward with her arms while Marcus pushed from behind, hands on her hips, shoving her through the gap inch by agonizing inch. Halfway through, the tunnel shook. Not a major tremor, but enough to make concrete groan and dust rain down like warnings. Don't stop. Keep moving. Victoria hauled herself faster, scraped skin from her palms. Didn't care, emerged on the other side, gasping. Marcus followed, moving like a wounded animal, everything in him screaming to stop, but momentum, the only thing keeping him conscious. 11:20, they rested. Flashlight battery at 10%. Marcus turned it off to conserve power. Darkness swallowed them whole. Victoria's voice came from the black. Marcus, are we going to make it? I don't know. The honesty hung between them, stripped of comfort. If we don't, I want you to know I'm grateful. Not just for this, for showing me what real strength looks like. My father always said strength was never showing weakness, never admitting error, never backing down. But you've been stronger in 2 hours than I've been in 20 years. Marcus breathed in the dark, conserving energy. Your father's wrong about most things. Seems like strength to you is just another word for armor. Real strength is being vulnerable enough to admit you're wrong and brave enough to change. Your father probably doesn't even know what that means. He doesn't. And I'm his daughter. I didn't know either until tonight. 11:30, Marcus turned the flashlight back on. Battery indicators showed 8%. They had maybe 20 minutes of light left. We move now, fast as we can. If this light dies, we're navigating blind. They stood, Marcus pulling Victoria up, Victoria leaning on Marcus, started toward the sounds of drilling that had grown louder. Rescue teams working from the outside in, trying to reach survivors before the mountain finished what it started. 11:45. They heard voices, saw light ahead, real light, bright white LED floods powered by generators instead of dying batteries. Marcus's flashlight finally gave up, plunging them back to darkness. But the rescue lights ahead were enough now. They pushed toward it, two people who'd started as enemy and victim, somehow transformed into partners by shared survival. 11:50. The tunnel exploded. Not the section they were in, but behind them, deep in the guts of the mountain. The shockwave hit them like a physical fist, throwing them forward, bouncing them off concrete, filling the air with dust and the roar of millions of tons of rock deciding gravity was more important than engineering. Marcus landed hard, lost his grip on Victoria, couldn't see anything through the dust cloud. Victoria! Here, I'm here! He crawled toward her voice, found her pinned under a new pile of debris, smaller than what had trapped her before, but enough to kill her if they didn't move fast. Marcus tried to stand, couldn't. His legs wouldn't respond properly. Blood loss catching up with adrenaline's retreat. Victoria saw it in his face. Marcus, you can't. I can, I will. But his body disagreed. He got his good arm under the concrete slab, tried to lift. It shifted 2 inches. His vision grayed at the edges. The slab dropped back. Victoria grabbed his face with both hands, forced him to look at her. Listen to me. You saved my life. You showed me who I need to be. Now you need to save yourself. Go get help. I don't leave people behind. You're not leaving me behind. You're going for help. There's a difference. Go to your daughter. She's counting, Marcus. She's still counting, and she needs you to come back. Marcus's eyes were unfocused. Emma's voice echoed in his head, counting, always counting, 947, 948, waiting for her father to keep his promise. Can't leave you. You're not. You're getting help. 20 meters ahead. I'll wait. I've gotten good at waiting. She pushed him, actually pushed him. using strength she'd found in the last 2 hours, strength her father had never taught her existed. Go! Marcus crawled, though. Couldn't walk, could barely move, but he crawled toward the light while behind him Victoria used her arms to drag herself after him, determined that if he made it, she'd make it too, that the man who'd saved her life wouldn't watch her die after everything they'd survived together. The rescue team saw them first, two figures emerging from dust and darkness, both bleeding, both broken, both somehow still moving. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. We've got survivors, medics up front. Hands grabbed Marcus, pulled him through the gap they'd drilled. Emergency lights blazed. Voices shouted medical terms. Someone put an oxygen mask on his face. There's another, female, injured leg. More hands. Victoria being lifted through, carried to a waiting stretcher. EMTs swarming her, IVs being started, neck brace applied. Marcus tried to sit up. Couldn't. The world was tilting in ways that had nothing to do with gravity. Emma, where's Emma? Sir, stay down. You're in shock. Emma! A small voice cut through everything else, high and clear and terrified. Daddy! She broke through the line of rescue workers, sprinted to where Marcus lay on a stretcher, being loaded into an ambulance, threw herself against his chest, sobbing so hard she shook. I counted to 982 and you came back. You came back. Marcus wrapped his good arm around her, buried his face in her hair, and let himself feel the relief of promises kept. Told you I would, baby. Daddy always keeps his promises. Victoria, being loaded into a separate ambulance, watched them through the open doors, saw Emma clinging to her father, saw Marcus holding his daughter like she was the only thing in the world worth saving, saw what love looked like when it wasn't transactional or conditional or measured against profit margins. Something inside Victoria broke open, not catastrophically, but like ice, cracking under spring sun, letting something frozen begin to thaw. She whispered to the paramedic checking her vitals. That man's name is Marcus Hayes. Write it down. Someone needs to remember what he did tonight. The paramedic wrote it down, not understanding why it mattered, not needing to. Emma pulled back enough to look at her father's face. You're hurt really bad, Daddy. I'm okay now, sweetheart. I'm with you. That makes everything okay. The lady you saved, is she going to be okay too? Marcus looked across the parking area, met Victoria's eyes through the gap between ambulances. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement maybe, or the beginning of understanding that survival changes people in ways catastrophe only starts. Yeah, I think she's going to be okay. Emma nodded, satisfied, laid her head back down on his chest, small hand gripping his shirt like she'd never let go. The ambulances pulled away in opposite directions, Marcus toward Denver General's Trauma Center, Victoria toward the same building by a different route. Behind them, the tunnel smoked and settled, a wound in the mountain that would take years to heal if it ever did. But in this moment, both of them were alive, both changed, both facing consequences that morning would bring in forms they couldn't predict. Investigations, media storms, legal reckoning, and the hard work of becoming people they could respect in mirrors. The mountain loomed above it all, patient and indifferent, older than human mistakes, unmoved by human redemption. It had killed tonight. It had also failed to kill. That was the closest thing to mercy geology offered. Marcus held Emma as the ambulance raced through night toward whatever came next. Victoria rode alone, surrounded by paramedics and equipment, but more isolated than she'd been in the tunnel, because now she had to face what she'd become and decide whether she had the courage to become something else. Dawn was still hours away, but it was coming, inevitable as consequences, bringing light to everything darkness had hidden. And somewhere in that approaching dawn, both of them would have to choose who they'd be when the world was watching, and the cost of truth was everything they'd built their identities around. 3 a.m. Denver General Hospital hummed with fluorescent urgency. Marcus woke to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of machines monitoring things he'd stopped tracking, heart rate, blood oxygen, whether living was worth the pain it cost. His shoulder had been surgically repaired, 12 screws, a titanium plate, 4 hours under anesthesia while surgeons rebuilt what concrete and desperation had torn apart. The surgeon had stopped by recovery, face grave, words careful. Mr. Hayes, the damage was extensive. You retore a rotator cuff that never healed properly from a previous injury, added significant trauma. You'll regain maybe 70% function with aggressive physical therapy. The other 30% is just gone. Marcus had nodded. 30% seemed like a fair trade for a life, even a life that had destroyed his. Emma slept in the chair beside his bed, curled under a hospital blanket Mrs. Chen had brought. The old woman sat vigil in the corner, knitting something blue, her presence a quiet anchor against the chaos pressing in from all sides. Marcus's phone, recovered from his truck, screen cracked but functional, showed 63 missed calls, 17 from numbers he didn't recognize, 21 from Captain Morrison. The rest from reporters who'd somehow gotten his contact information within hours of the rescue. One voicemail stood out. Left at 2:15 a.m. by someone named Martin Westbrook, attorney for Cross Infrastructure. Mr. Hayes, this is Martin Westbrook. I represent Cross Infrastructure. We'd like to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement regarding tonight's events. Compensation for your heroic actions. Please call me at your earliest convenience. This is time sensitive. Marcus deleted it, knew exactly what mutually beneficial meant in legal language. Money in exchange for silence, for not mentioning that Victoria Cross had been in a tunnel her company built that collapsed because someone chose profit over physics. His door opened. Captain Morrison entered, still in his smoke-stained uniform, exhaustion carved into every line of his 50-year-old face. You're awake, good. How's the shoulder? Expensive. Morrison pulled up a chair. We need to talk. Federal investigators want statements. NTSB, FBI, Department of Transportation. This isn't just a local incident anymore. 6 people died in that collapse. Victoria Cross was inside her own company's tunnel when it failed. That opens doors nobody wants opened, including her father, especially her father. Richard Cross has already hired 3 law firms. They're building defensive walls so high God couldn't see over them. Marcus looked at Emma sleeping. I'm not interested in walls or lawyers. I just want my daughter safe. Then you need to understand what's coming. The media knows you're the guy who saved Victoria Cross. They know you used to work for her company. They're building a story about the working-class hero rescuing the corrupt CEO. It's going to get ugly. It already is ugly. 6 people died because Victoria Cross ignored safety warnings for 6 months. Morrison leaned forward. Do you have proof of that? No, but someone does. 4 a.m. Victoria woke in a different wing of the same hospital, private room with security outside her door. Not for her protection, for damage control. Richard Cross had stationed lawyers like sentries, screening every visitor, every call, every piece of information that might leak beyond walls he controlled. Her leg was immobilized in an external fixator, metal pins drilled through bone, connected by bars that made her look like a cyborg built from pain and consequences. The orthopedic surgeon had been blunt. The tibia was fractured and displaced. Blood flow was compromised for several hours. We've stabilized it, but you're looking at 6 months minimum recovery, possibly permanent mobility issues. You were very lucky Mr. Hayes got you out when he did. Lucky. The word felt obscene. Daniel sat beside her bed, the only person Richard's lawyers couldn't bar. Her brother looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. How are you feeling? Like I was crushed by my own tunnel. Vic, don't tell me it wasn't my fault. I signed off on that tunnel. I ignored Dr. Chen's warnings. I fired Marcus Hayes 5 years ago for trying to stop exactly this kind of disaster. This is on me. Daniel's jaw tightened. Dad's already crafting the narrative. Act of God, unforeseeable geological instability. He's got experts ready to testify. Daniel, 6 people are dead. I know. Their families deserve truth, not experts paid to lie. Daniel studied his sister's face. Saw something there he hadn't seen in years. Clarity, maybe. Or the kind of exhaustion that strips away everything except what matters. What are you going to do? Victoria's hands trembled as she reached for the water cup on her bedside table. I don't know, but I can't keep being his puppet. I almost died tonight because I was too scared to stand up to him. How many more people have to die before I find some courage? Her door opened. Richard Cross entered without knocking, three lawyers trailing like remora on a shark. 68 years old, silver hair perfect despite the hour, suit custom despite the crisis. His eyes found Victoria, assessed her like a quarterly earnings report, damaged but salvageable. Victoria, thank God you're safe. The words held as much warmth as a board meeting. Daniel stood. Dad, she needs rest. She needs to understand what's at stake. Victoria, the FBI is requesting interviews. So is the NTSB. Our attorneys have advised complete silence pending investigation. Victoria met her father's eyes. People died, Father. Which is why we need to be strategic. The company's liability. I'm not talking about liability. I'm talking about 6 human beings who aren't going home to their families because I was too weak to close a tunnel I knew was unsafe. Richard's expression hardened. You're in shock. The doctor said, I'm not in shock. I'm awake. For the first time in 20 years, I'm actually awake. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Daniel watched his sister with something like pride flickering across his exhaustion. Richard stepped closer to Victoria's bed. Victoria, listen carefully. Marcus Hayes is a problem. He worked for us. He knows things. My attorneys tell me he's refusing settlements. You tried to buy him? I tried to protect this company, which is what you should be focused on instead of melodramatic guilt. Victoria's voice came out steel wrapped in silk. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of my room. Take your lawyers. Leave. Richard's face flushed. You're emotional, irrational. I said leave. Daniel, make them leave. Daniel moved to the door, opened it. You heard her. Out. Richard stared at his daughter, at his son, calculating odds and angles and how to regain control of a situation slipping through his fingers. This conversation isn't over. Yes, it is. Everything you've controlled for 20 years is over. I just haven't figured out what comes next. Richard left, lawyers scurrying behind. The door closed. Silence filled the space like water filling a hole. Daniel returned to his chair. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. He's not going to let this go. I know, but I can't keep being his daughter in my own person. Tonight, Marcus Hayes taught me something. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing right when wrong is easier. 7 a.m. Morning light crept through hospital windows, indifferent to human drama. Marcus was released with prescriptions he couldn't afford, physical therapy referrals he'd figure out somehow, and instructions to rest that Emma's existence made impossible. Mrs. Chen drove them home in her ancient Honda, Emma sandwiched between them, holding her father's good hand with both of hers. Daddy, are you a hero? No, baby, I'm just a guy who did what needed doing. The news said you were a hero. It's on TV and everything. Marcus closed his eyes. The media had found him faster than he'd hoped. His phone buzzed constantly, reporters, producers, someone from Good Morning America wanting an exclusive interview. Mrs. Chen navigated Denver's morning traffic with the confidence of someone who'd survived worse than aggressive drivers. Marcus, you should be careful. These reporters, they make you say things you don't mean. Twist your words. I know, I'm not talking to anyone. Good, you focus on healing. I watch Emma as long as you need. They reached the apartment complex in Aurora. Marcus climbed stairs slowly, each step a negotiation with pain. Inside, their small 2-bedroom space felt simultaneously too empty and too full. Empty of Lisa, full of consequences that had followed them home. Emma made him sit on the couch. You need to rest, doctor said. Yes, ma'am. She brought him water, his pills, the stuffed bear she'd slept with since her mother died, tucked it beside him like a guardian. Mr. Bear will protect you while you sleep. Marcus pulled her close with his good arm. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Daddy, more than anything in the whole world. She kissed his cheek and went to her room. Marcus heard her talking to herself, processing the night through 7-year-old logic that couldn't quite grasp how close she'd come to losing him. His phone rang, unknown number. He answered before thinking. Mr. Hayes, this is Julia Park. I was Victoria Cross's assistant. I need to talk to you about something important. 8 a.m., Julia Park sat in a Starbucks 3 blocks from Cross Infrastructure headquarters, laptop open, coffee untouched. 32 years old, Korean American, sharp enough to have climbed to executive assistant despite being the only person in the building who regularly questioned decisions. She'd spent the night at her desk, knowing Richard Cross would purge files the moment market opened. Had copied everything relevant to 3 USB drives and her personal cloud storage before security locked down servers. Now she stared at Marcus Hayes' contact information, obtained through his emergency contact forms, still an HR system, and wondered if doing the right thing always felt this much like career suicide. She called. He answered. "Mr. Hayes, this is Julia Park. I was Victoria Cross's assistant. I need to talk to you about something important." His voice sounded rough, exhausted. "What kind of something?" "Evidence, emails, documentation that Victoria ignored 7 official warnings from Dr. Sarah Chen about Thunder Ridge Tunnel. Proof that Frank Russo Construction was using substandard concrete. Proof that Richard Cross specifically ordered Victoria to keep the tunnel open despite safety concerns." Silence on the line. Julia continued. "I've watched you on the news. You saved Victoria's life after she destroyed yours. That takes a kind of integrity I haven't seen in this company. So I'm offering you something. The truth. Complete documentation. Everything needed to prove what really happened." "Why me?" "Because you're the only person involved who doesn't have something to gain by lying. Victoria's father will bury this if he can. Victoria herself, I don't know what she'll do. She's changed since the collapse, but changed enough to testify against her own father? I can't be sure. You're my insurance policy. The truth needs to be somewhere Richard Cross can't reach it." Marcus processed this. Emma's voice drifted from her bedroom, talking to her dolls, explaining that Daddy was a hero even though he said he wasn't. "Send it to Captain Morrison at Denver Fire and Rescue. He's coordinating with federal investigators." "I'm sending it to him too, but I want you to have copies. Sometimes evidence disappears when powerful people get nervous. Sometimes whistleblowers have accidents. Call me paranoid. I call it realistic. I've seen how Cross Infrastructure operates." "Then you understand. Check your email in 10 minutes. The files will be there, password protected. Use your daughter's name, all lowercase, no spaces." "How do you know my daughter's name?" "Your HR file. I read everything before I left. I know about Lisa too." "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. For what it's worth, not everyone at Cross Infrastructure agreed with how you were treated. Some of us just didn't have the courage to speak up. You're speaking up now. 5 years too late, but better late than never, right?" Julia hung up, sent the encrypted files to Marcus's email and Captain Morrison's official account. Then she packed her laptop, walked out of Starbucks, and drove to her sister's house in Boulder, where Richard Cross's lawyers couldn't find her without working for it. 9 a.m. Victoria's hospital room filled with flowers, arrangements from politicians, business partners, competitors who couldn't miss the PR opportunity of sympathizing with a billionaire CEO who'd survived her own tunnel collapse. The irony wasn't lost on anyone with functioning brain cells. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived unannounced, walking past security who didn't recognize her, past Richard's executives who were busy elsewhere, straight into Victoria's room like a woman who had stopped caring about permission. 45 years old, Chinese-American, professional engineer, with 20 years of structures refusing to fall because she'd done her calculations right. Her face held the particular fury of someone who'd been proven catastrophically correct. Victoria looked up from the tablet where she'd been reading news coverage, recognized Sarah immediately. "Dr. Chen, Ms. Cross." Silence stretched between them, waited with 6 deaths and 7 ignored warnings. Sarah's voice came out controlled, precise, each word measured. "I want you to know I take no satisfaction in being right. 6 people are dead. You almost died. That's not vindication. That's tragedy." Victoria set down her tablet. "You warned me. 7 times. I deleted every email." "I know. I kept copies. I imagine federal investigators have them now." "They do, along with documentation of every conversation where your father overruled safety concerns, every meeting where Frank Russo bribed inspectors, every corner cut to save money or time. Victoria met Sarah's eyes directly. Are you here to tell me I'm going to prison? I don't know if you're going to prison. That's for prosecutors to decide. I'm here because despite everything, I need to understand why. You're an MIT graduate. You took the same engineering ethics courses I did. You know the responsibility we carry. So why did you look at my warnings and choose profit over lives? Victoria's composure cracked. Tears welled. Because I was terrified of my father, of being seen as weak, of becoming my mother who left rather than stand up to him. So I stayed, and I signed what he told me to sign, and I killed 6 people through cowardice. Sarah pulled up a chair, sat. Her anger hadn't diminished, but something else joined it. Exhaustion, maybe. The bone-deep weariness of fighting battles that shouldn't need fighting. You want redemption? Here's what it costs. Full transparency, complete testimony. You turn over every document, every email, every conversation you remember. You testify against your father and Frank Russo. You accept whatever legal consequences follow. You don't hide behind lawyers or settlements or PR consultants. You face what you've done and you help make sure it never happens again. My father will destroy me. Your father destroyed you years ago. You've just been too scared to notice. The question is whether you have enough left inside to rebuild into someone worth being. Victoria wiped her eyes. Marcus Hayes said something similar. In the tunnel, while he was saving my life. Marcus Hayes is a better person than you deserve. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't get better by deserving it. Maybe we get better by choosing it, even when we don't. Sarah stood. Federal investigators will interview you this afternoon. Your lawyers will advise you to say nothing. That's good legal advice. It's also how innocent people stay dead and guilty people stay rich. Your choice, Ms. Cross. She left without waiting for a response. Victoria sat alone in her private room, surrounded by flowers from people who didn't actually care if she lived or died, and made a decision that would cost her everything she'd spent 20 years building. Noon. Marcus's apartment felt smaller with FBI agents inside it. 2 of them, Special Agent Catherine Reeves and Special Agent David Park, both professional and polite, and absolutely not leaving until they got what they came for. Emma watched from her bedroom doorway, wary of strangers in suits asking daddy questions. Agent Reeves sat across from Marcus, recording device on the coffee table between them. Mr. Hayes, we understand you have relevant employment history with Cross Infrastructure. Can you describe the circumstances of your termination? Marcus walked them through it. The Silver Creek Bridge, Frank Russo's substandard concrete, his report to Victoria, his firing 2 weeks later, the blacklisting that followed. All of it delivered in flat, factual tones that made the injustice sharper for its lack of embellishment. Agent Park took notes. Did you have documentation of these safety violations? I did, 5 years ago. Cross Infrastructure confiscated all my files when they terminated me. Said it was proprietary information. Do you have copies? No, they escorted me out with security. I couldn't take anything. Agent Reeves leaned forward. What about recent documentation? Anything from Julia Park? Marcus's face gave nothing away. What about her? She contacted you this morning. We know because we're monitoring communications into and out of Cross Infrastructure. She sent you encrypted files. We need those files, Mr. Hayes. Get a warrant. We can get a warrant, but this goes faster if you cooperate. Faster for who? You? Richard Cross? The lawyers trying to bury evidence before it reaches court? Agent Park's expression stayed neutral. We're not working for Richard Cross. We're investigating potential criminal negligence, corporate fraud, bribery of state officials. Those files could be essential to prosecution. Then get them from Julia Park. She's disappeared, turned off her phone, left her apartment. We're trying to locate her for her own protection, or to pressure her into silence. Agent Reeves's patience showed cracks. Mr. Hayes, 6 people died in that tunnel. You almost died saving Victoria Cross. Don't you want justice for what happened? Marcus looked at Emma watching from her doorway, looked back at the agents. I want the truth to matter more than power. That's not the same as justice. Justice requires a system that works. This system protected Frank Russo for 20 years while he built effective infrastructure. This system fired me for reporting safety violations. This system let Richard Cross ignore warnings until people died. You want me to trust that system to suddenly work now? Show me why I should. The agents left 30 minutes later without the files, frustrated but unable to push harder without warrants that would take days to obtain. Marcus locked the door behind them. Emma emerged from her room. Daddy, why were those people asking questions? Because sometimes when bad things happen, people need to understand why. Are you in trouble? No, baby, I'm not in trouble. Promise? I promise. It was a lie. He was in every kind of trouble, legal, financial, physical. His shoulder would never fully heal. His savings account was empty. Medical bills were already arriving like judgments. The media wouldn't leave him alone. Federal investigators wanted information he'd given Captain Morrison hours ago. But Emma didn't need to know that. Emma needed her father to be a rock in shifting seas, stable when everything else moved. Mrs. Chen knocked softly. Marcus let her in. I make lunch. Emma needs to eat. Thank you. Marcus, reporters outside, 4 of them with cameras. I tell them to leave, but they don't leave. I'll handle it. Marcus walked outside, found exactly what Mrs. Chen described. 2 TV crews, 1 print journalist, 1 blogger with a podcast that claimed 8 million downloads. They swarmed the moment they saw him. Mr. Hayes, can you comment on your relationship with Victoria Cross? Were you surprised she was in the tunnel? Is it true you were fired for reporting safety violations? Did you hesitate before going back to save her? Marcus held up his good hand. The question stopped. His voice came out quiet but absolute. I have one statement. Then I'm going inside to have lunch with my daughter, and I'm not coming back out today. Are we clear? The reporters nodded, cameras rolling. 6 people died in Thunder Ridge Tunnel because someone chose money over safety. I don't know if that someone was Victoria Cross or her father Richard Cross or Frank Russo or all of them together. That's for investigators to determine. What I know is this. I spent 15 years in construction and engineering. I know how concrete is supposed to test. I know when corners are being cut. And I knew Thunder Ridge Tunnel was dangerous 6 months ago when I sent anonymous warnings to the State Transportation Department. Those warnings were ignored. He paused. Let that sink in. Victoria Cross made terrible decisions, but so did everyone else with power to stop this and didn't. So did the state inspectors who passed faulty concrete. So did the politicians who took campaign money from Cross infrastructure and looked the other way. This isn't one person's failure, it's systemic. And until we fix the system, disasters like Thunder Ridge will keep happening. Will you testify against Victoria Cross? I'll testify to the truth, whatever that means for anyone involved. Do you forgive her? The question hit different. Marcus thought about Victoria in the tunnel, crying, apologizing, asking why he hadn't left her to die. Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone deserves it. It's something you choose because carrying hate costs more than letting it go. I don't know if I forgive her, but I chose to save her life. That has to count for something. He went inside, closed the door, ignored the follow-up questions shouted at his back. Emma was setting the table. Mrs. Chen had made soup, Korean bone broth, healing food, the kind of kindness that costs time and care. Come eat, Marcus. You need strength. They ate together. Emma chattered about school, about her friends, about the fish tank her teacher had installed, and how the goldfish was her favorite. Normal 7-year-old concerns, blissfully ignorant of federal investigations and media circuses, and the weight pressing down on her father's shoulders. After lunch, Emma went to her room for quiet time. Mrs. Chen cleaned dishes. Marcus opened his laptop. The encrypted files from Julia Park had downloaded. He entered the password, Emma, and watched 20 years of corporate malfeasance unfold across his screen. Emails from Richard Cross to Victoria, subject lines like, Chen's latest hysterics, and Russo timeline concerns, ignore. Financial records showing Frank Russo's company had bid 30% below competitors by using concrete that tested at 60% of specification. Inspection reports that had been altered. Original engineers' notes flagging deficiencies. Revised versions showing all clear. Payment records to state officials. Amounts large enough to buy new cars or pay off mortgages. small enough to avoid federal reporting requirements. And throughout it all, Victoria's name, her signature, her tacit approval of every corner cut, every warning ignored, every decision that prioritized profit margins over human safety. Marcus read for 2 hours. By the end, his stomach churned with the banality of it. Not melodramatic villainy, but simple, consistent choices to value money over lives. Death by spreadsheet, murder by quarterly earnings report. His phone rang. Captain Morrison. Marcus, you need to see the news. Victoria Cross is giving a press conference. 3 p.m. Victoria sat in a wheelchair at a Denver General Conference room, leg in its external fixator, no makeup, no prepared remarks, just truth dressed in hospital gown and consequences. Cameras crowded the small space. Reporters shouted questions. Victoria raised one hand for silence, the gesture of someone who'd spent 20 years commanding rooms and was using that skill one final time for something other than profit. My name is Victoria Cross. Was the CEO of Cross Infrastructure. 2 nights ago, Thunder Ridge Tunnel collapsed. 6 people died. Many more were injured. Her voice stayed level despite the trembling in her hands. I need to tell you something. The tunnel collapsed because I ignored safety warnings. Dr. Sarah Chen, our chief structural engineer, sent me 7 official warnings over 6 months. She documented that concrete quality was 40% below design specifications. She recommended immediate closure. She pulled out a tablet, held it up. These are her emails. I deleted them from our system, but Dr. Chen kept copies, as she should have, because she was right and I was wrong. The room erupted with questions. Victoria talked over them. I want to be clear about this. My father, Richard Cross, pressured me to keep the tunnel open. He said delays would cost the company $50 million. He said safety concerns were overblown. But I made the final decision. I signed the documents. I am the CEO. The responsibility is mine. Tears tracked down her face. She didn't wipe them away. The man who saved my life is named Marcus Hayes. 5 years ago, I fired him from Cross Infrastructure because he reported similar safety violations on a different project. My father ordered his termination. I carried out that order without question, without conscience. Mr. Hayes' wife died 3 years ago. He couldn't afford proper treatment because I had him blacklisted throughout the industry. She looked directly at the camera. Marcus Hayes had every reason to leave me to die in that tunnel, but he didn't. He risked his life to save mine. He showed me what real strength looks like, not the kind my father taught me, where you never admit weakness or error, but the kind where you choose right even when wrong is easier. Richard Cross's lawyers would be apoplectic. Victoria didn't care. I'm resigning as CEO of Cross Infrastructure effective immediately. I'm surrendering my board seat. I'm cooperating fully with federal investigators. I'm providing all evidence of corporate negligence, including evidence implicating my father in a pattern of prioritizing profits over safety. Her voice broke. To the families of those who died, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. It will never be enough. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance Marcus Hayes gave me. She wheeled herself away from the podium. Reporters mobbed forward. Security held them back. Daniel appeared, pushed Victoria's wheelchair through a side door, away from cameras and consequences that were just beginning. Marcus watched the press conference on his laptop, Emma beside him on the couch. Daddy, that's the lady you saved. Yeah, baby, that's her. She seems sad. She is sad. She did something wrong and now she's trying to make it right. Will it work? Marcus thought about the FBI agents, the federal investigation, Richard Cross's lawyers, the machinery of power already grinding into motion to protect wealth and bury truth. I don't know. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't enough, but it's all we have. His phone exploded with notifications, news outlets replaying Victoria's confession, social media fracturing into camps, those who saw redemption, those who saw calculated PR. Marcus ignored all of it. He pulled Emma close with his good arm. You know what I learned this week? What? That being strong doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you do the right thing even when you're terrified, even when it costs you everything. That's the only kind of strength that matters. Emma thought about this with 7-year-old seriousness. Like Mommy, when she was sick, but she still smiled so I wouldn't be scared. Marcus's throat tightened, exactly like Mommy. 5 p.m. Richard Cross sat in his corner office, 70 floors above Denver, and watched his empire begin its collapse. Not the sudden catastrophic failure of Thunder Ridge. Empires built on Richard Cross's model didn't fall that easily, but the slow erosion of credibility, the death by 1,000 cuts, the kind of ending that takes years but starts with moments like his daughter confessing corporate negligence on national television. His phone rang. Martin Westbrook, his lead attorney, voice tight with controlled panic. "Richard, we need to discuss damage control. Victoria just destroyed our entire defense strategy." "I'm aware. The FBI will use her testimony as probable cause for broader investigation. They'll subpoena everything, financial records, communications, employee files. We need to invoke attorney-client privilege across the entire organization." "Do it." "There's another issue, Julia Park. She's disappeared with what we believe are copies of sensitive documents. Find her." "We're trying, but Richard, even if we find her, even if we suppress the documents, Victoria's testimony is already public. Prosecutors will offer her immunity in exchange for evidence against you, against the company. We're looking at federal charges: conspiracy, bribery, negligent homicide." Richard's voice came out cold as the steel that had failed in Thunder Ridge. "Then we fight. That's what we pay you for. Fight harder." He hung up, stood at his window overlooking the city he had helped build. Thought about Victoria at 14, standing in the driveway watching her mother's taxi drive away, turning to him with eyes that begged for comfort he'd never learned to give. He'd told her then what he believed now. Weakness had no place in the Cross family. Strength meant never backing down, never admitting error, never showing the soft underbelly that enemies could exploit. Victoria had just shown the world every weakness she possessed. In Richard's calculus, she'd committed professional suicide. But something nagged at him, something he couldn't quite articulate. His daughter had looked different in that press conference. Not broken, despite the wheelchair and the tears, but somehow more solid, more present, like she'd been a ghost for 20 years and the tunnel collapse had shocked her back into being real. Richard pushed the thought away, returned to his desk, started making calls to politicians, to board members, to everyone who owed Cross infrastructure favors accumulated over decades of strategic donations and calculated influence. His empire would not fall. He would not allow it. 7 p.m. Marcus stood in his kitchen, cooking dinner one-handed. Pasta, because that's what he could manage with his shoulder immobilized. Emma set the table with the care she brought to everything since Lisa died, creating order from chaos through precise arrangement of forks and napkins. His phone rang again. He'd stopped answering unknown numbers, but this one showed Captain Morrison's name. "Marcus, you need to know something. Victoria Cross just sent federal investigators a complete evidence package. Emails, financial records, recorded conversations. Everything Julia Park had plus more. She's requesting immunity in exchange for testimony against her father and Frank Russo. Will they give it to her? Probably. Her testimony is worth more than her prosecution. She's the inside witness they need to bring down the whole operation." Marcus stirred pasta, phone wedged between shoulder and ear. "So she gets to walk away while 6 families bury their dead. She'll face civil liability, lose her fortune, spend years in depositions and trials. That's not walking away. That's choosing to face consequences instead of hiding behind lawyers. It's still not justice." "No, but it's closer than we usually get." Morrison paused. "For what it's worth, I think she's changed. People don't fake the kind of testimony she gave. She's burning every bridge she has." "Good. Maybe she'll learn to build better ones." Marcus hung up, drained pasta, added sauce from a jar because homemade was beyond his current capabilities, called Emma to dinner. They ate together, discussing her day at school, her upcoming field trip to the aquarium, whether goldfish dream. Normal conversation in an abnormal week, anchoring themselves to routine because routine was the only thing keeping chaos at bay. After dinner, Emma brushed her teeth. Marcus read her a story, Where the Wild Things Are, the same book Lisa had read every night during chemotherapy, back when they'd believed there would be enough nights for all the stories left unread. Emma fell asleep mid-chapter. Marcus closed the book, kissed her forehead, turned off her light and stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, reminded that everything he'd survived had been for this, for moments of peace when his daughter slept safe. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Hayes, this is Victoria Cross. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I meant what I said at the press conference. You saved my life. I'm trying to be worth it. Thank you. I hope someday you can forgive me. V. Marcus stared at the message. Thought about forgiveness, about whether it was something earned or given, about whether Victoria Cross deserved anything except the consequences she'd spent 20 years avoiding. He thought about Lisa, who'd forgiven the doctors who misdiagnosed her tumor, about Emma, who forgave him every time he came home too tired to play, about the kind of person he wanted to be when the anger finally burned itself out. He typed a response. Forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. Work on being someone who deserves it. That's all any of us can do. Marcus, he sent it, turned off his phone, walked to his own room and lay down in darkness, shoulder throbbing, future uncertain, but alive in ways that mattered more than comfort. Outside, Denver's lights blazed against the night. Somewhere in the city, Victoria Cross sat in her hospital room reading his text message and crying because mercy from unexpected places felt like drowning and resurrection at once. Somewhere else, Richard Cross plotted strategy with lawyers who charged $1,000 an hour to find loopholes in morality. Somewhere beyond all of them, Thunder Ridge Tunnel remained sealed, a tomb and a warning, evidence of what happens when systems value profit over people and nobody with power chooses otherwise. But change was coming. Not the kind that fixes everything overnight. Not Hollywood redemption where truth wins and good people prosper. Just the slow, grinding change that happens when enough people decide that how things are is not how things have to be. Marcus closed his eyes. Thought about tomorrow, physical therapy, medical bills, Emma's needs, federal testimony, media attention, all of it pressing down like concrete. But he'd carried heavier weight through darker tunnels. He'd survived what should have killed him. And if he could do that, he could survive what came next. Morning would bring its own disasters. Tonight he let himself rest.